Hey everybody, it's Cauliflower Man here, and today I'm going to be talking about the Austrian theory of the business cycle. Now, I know that's kind of a mouthful, and a lot of you people are probably wondering what the hell I'm talking about. Well, the Austrian theory of the business cycle is just it's a theory by a school of economic thought as to why there are booms and busts in an economy, why we have recessions, things like that. Now, there's multiple economic schools of thought that are out there. The main one is Keynesian, and so I'm really just going to talk about the Keynesian one and then talk about the Austrian one, just because the Austrian one's it's not exactly simple, and the only way to explain it simply is I'm going to make an example of people living on basically an island out in the middle of nowhere, and it's just going to be three people. But anyways, the Keynesian theory of the business cycle is that eventually people start to lose their confidence. Like when things start going a little bit bad, people lose their confidence, and once they lose their confidence, that just exacerbates the problem and things get worse and worse. And so when people start doing a little bit bad, what the Keynesians say is that they're going to quit investing, and that's going to make things get even worse and worse. So just so you know, this Keynesian theory, it's not even an economic theory. Just to say that, oh, it's psychology. It's a psychological theory, and no one doubts the fact that if you have an economy and or people start losing money, that they're probably going to pull out their money more than they probably should. Nobody doubts that at all. And the opposite is true too. When things are going well, that's when people should be pulling out their money, but that's when most people start putting their money in, and that's the wrong way to invest, and nobody doubts that. But to just say that people lose their confidence and that causes, depressions, that's quite a big statement to make. And I mean, for the dominant economic model, and by that I just mean that if you go to college or university, whatever, they're going to teach you Keynesian economics. And so if they're model for why business cycles occurs is literally just people lose confidence. That's not much of a it's not much of a theory. And so then the Keynesian response is that once the animal spirits start getting degraded, once the economy starts going bad, what you do is you artificially increase the supply of loanable funds, because as I said, they think that the problem is people aren't investing enough money. So what they do is they create fake money, and then they say, hey, we'll just invest this fake money as the government and we'll pay it back later. As we can see, or as you will see, the Austrian theory of the business cycle says that it is exactly this creation of fake money that causes the business cycle. And so if you watched my the fraud of fractional reserve banking video, I explained in that one that that the fractional reserve banking system actually creates money out of thin air. So that's the number one problem in basically the Austrian theory of the business cycle. They say that's the number one problem. They also say that if you have a depression or recession or panic, whatever you want to call it. They always change the name over the years. But if you have an economic downturn, they say that the worst thing you can do is just have the government go into debt and spend a bunch of extra money, because that's just going to cause you problems in the long run. So let's go ahead and talk about basically an example of living on a desert island. Not desert island, but you're just living on an island. It's just three people. Let's say it's you, me, and Bob. And let's say for some reason I got there first. I crashed on my own private boat. And so I've been there for a while, and I've been fishing there. That's basically all you can do. But I've got a bunch of fish stored up, and so you guys you crash on the island, and you start fishing too. But you realize you can basically only fish as much as you eat. But I've been there for a long time, so I don't eat very much now or something. So I'm able to fish just slightly more than I eat. So I have these savings stocked up. And so you, being a smart person, decide, you know what? I think I'm going to make a fishing net, because then you'll be able to fish more fish, and then With those more fish, obviously, you'll have more free time, and as it stands right now on this island, you and Bob don't have much free time. You spend all your time fishing. I don't have much free time either, but I do have my savings. But the problem with making a fishing net is if you make a fishing net, you realize that, hey, you're not going to be able to fish for a while, so you're going to have to go hungry. But you look over at my fish stock, I guess you could say, all the fish I have stocked up, and you think to yourself, you know what? If I ask him for some of his fish and tell him that I'll pay him back with the fish I get from my net, both of us will make money, or not make money from it, but both of us will get more fish from it. And so let's say I've got, like a 2 weeks worth or 2 weeks stock of fish saved up, and you only need 10 days worth of fish. And so you come over to me and you're like, you know what? You know what, Cauliflower Man? I've got a deal for you. I'm going to make a fishing net, and with this fishing net, I'm going to make a lot more. I'm going to be able to catch a lot more fish, but in order to make the fishing net, I need 10 days worth of fish. So if you loan me out 10 days worth of fish, then I'll give you an extra fish a day for a full month. And so I look at that deal and I think to myself, you know what? If he gives me back 30 fish and I only have to give him back 10 fish, then I'm going to make a 20 fish profit. And so that's a great idea for me. And I look at you and you seem like a real smart guy, so you start making your fishing net. And then let's say you start making your fishing net, and then Bob, he comes over and he looks at what you're doing and he thinks to himself, you know what? That's a smart idea. And Bob's a bit of a follower, and so he wants to do the same thing. And so he offers me the same deal. And now, obviously, if you were looking at this scenario, you would think to yourself, well, I don't have enough fish because I've already loaned out 10 to you. But if we were doing something like fractional reserve banking, and under the idea of fractional reserve banking, I would only have to store, like I guess in the United States it's 10%. That's the fractional reserve rate. So I would only have to store, of the 10 fish I'm going to give to you, store one, and then I could say, you know what, I'm going to give the loan out to Bob too. But if, as you would notice, if I were to actually operate a fractional reserve fishing bank on this island, I would run out of fish before either of you would make your net. Nobody would be able to make the net. So you'd both be, partially done with the fishing net, and then it'd be like, whoops, sorry, I'm out of fish. Sucks to be you guys. And then you guys wouldn't have anything. Like, you'd have done that work for absolutely nothing, and then all my extra fish would be completely gone. So that right there is a very short example of the Austrian theory of the business cycle. If I artificially increase the supply of fish, it doesn't actually increase the wealth of the island. So that's actually what banks do. It's a little harder to see nowadays because we don't use gold as backing of the US dollar. Up until 1971, gold was backing the US dollar. So when they artificially increased the money supply, before then it was very obvious that we didn't get any more gold, we just got more paper money. And so it would be the same problem, is that when you artificially increase the supply of paper money, the money that doesn't exist, or I guess you could call it fiat funds to be more accurate, then you run into the problem that we have on our island, that you loan out too many things and people invest in too many things and they're not able to finish it. And so obviously in the scenario where you couldn't finish your fishing nets, that would be called a depression basically, because everybody thought, hey, we're going to be really rich, we're going to have 2 fishing nets, everything's going to be going great, we're going to have a lot of free time on our island. But because you're not able to finish the fishing net because I artificially increased the supply of loanable funds, and loanable funds on this island are fish, by artificially increasing the supply of fish through fractional reserves, obviously nobody finishes their fishing net, and then we're going to have a recession. So very simply, that is how the Austrian theory of the business cycle occurs. And just so you know, if you want to actually do some research into this yourself, you'll notice that the Austrian theory of the business cycle, it segregates things into goods of a higher order and goods of a lower order. Goods of a higher order are capital goods. That would be like in our island scenario, the fishing net. And goods of a lower order would be goods like fish. So according to the Austrian theory of the business cycle, if you artificially increase the supply of credit, or loanable funds, which in the island scenario is fish, what you will do is you will collapse the goods of a higher order, which are the capital goods. So in this case, you would collapse the market for fishing nets. And obviously you can see that in the island scenario, if you're only able to halfway complete the fishing net and then it doesn't actually get completed, whereas before we thought we were going to get 2, we just collapsed that market. Okay, we completely collapse that market. But the Austrian theory of the business cycle also says that goods of a lower order, goods that are consumption goods, those markets will not be affected that much. So even without our fishing nets, and when we go back to this, even without the fishing nets, we're still going to go back out and fish. So at the fish market doesn't get changed that much. However, the fishing net market, that gets changed a lot. And obviously, as you can see, until we build up enough supply of loanable funds, which in this case are fish, we won't be able to finish those fishing nets. And if we go back to the fractional reserve banking system that I was using for my fish bank, then obviously we're going to run into the exact same problem, and we're going to try and invest and build too many fishing nets, and we're not going to be able to finish them. And then halfway through, everyone's going to realize, oh no, we're out of fish, and then everyone's going to get real irritated and mad. So just so you know, this is actually what happens in the modern banking system. They artificially increase the supply of credit through fractional reserve banking, and they just assume that, hey, we can just make money out of nothing, and it's not going to cause any problems. But as you can see, if you try to make anything out of nothing, it's going to cause you problems later on. It's far easier to see in this fish bank scenario on an island, and when you try and look at it in a modern economy with all the interconnected workings of it, it's a little hard to see, but it's the exact same concept going on. You can't artificially increase the supply of anything and expect it to work out. And the reason that this is a big problem is because banks are by far the biggest, or I can't necessarily say they're the biggest industry. The food industry might be bigger, but banks are massive in the modern economy. And the reason they're massive is because they get to reap all the rewards off of this fake credit that they create. Because imagine if you're a bank and you had to actually play by the rules, so you could only loan out the money that you have, and obviously you're going to make less money than if you're a fractional reserve bank that gets to loan out 10 times more money than it actually has. The reason why this gets really screwy is that when you go bankrupt, you have to pay the bank back. Like, you're on the hook. The bank gets your house, the bank gets everything you own. But when the bank has a bank run because of this fractional reserve banking, because like I said in the fraud of fractional reserve video, they're not actually on the hook, because what you give to them with your bank deposit, it's called a mutum. It's a loan, and they're just supposed to pay you back in equal dollar, but when they run out of it, it's just like, whoops, sorry, our bad. So everyone gets screwed over by the banks due to this fractional reserve system. It causes investors to try and invest in new things when we don't actually have the money for it, so they completely screw over the market in this. But anyways, I hope this sort of helped give you a very simple example on the Austrian theory of the business cycle. If you want to look into it yourself, go ahead and look into it. Like I said, there's a bunch of other theories of the business cycle. The Austrian theory is a good one. There's also a decent one by the London Currency School. But anyways, I just think it's a very interesting topic, and one that a lot of people are really kind of confused about.